There is an idea of
Kier Starmer.
some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there.
Hello and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena. So, as you could tell by that intro, this week I'm doing something about British politics, which is potentially viewer figures suicide, but as my viewer figures are incredibly low, I don't think I'm probably risking all that much. I'm doing this largely because one of my viewers requested it. They asked me why don't I do many videos on British stuff when I am British, and they were British too and they wanted to see more. Well, maybe this video will give you the answer as to why, but I'll give it a go. I thought we would take a look at current Labour leader, if you can call it Labour, if you can call him a leader, Kier Starmer, who is more of a sort of ghost of an algorithm that once existed than a human being.
So Kier Starmer, why do you think you're behind the Conservative Party in the opinion polls?
So for those of you who don't know, the UK's Conservative Party is currently in power. They have been for the entire pandemic, which has been an absolute catastrophic disaster. We're the second worst country in the world for our management of it, after America, of course, and probably the worst in Europe, I think. The death toll currently stands at 154,811, and the vast majority of those deaths were completely and utterly avoidable. Basically, our government has totally and without reservation flubbed it in every conceivable way. And given that they are literally responsible for more deaths than the Blitz, it is absolutely staggering that the current Labour Party is behind them in the polls. So, what does Kier Starmer have to say for himself on that?
The argument I've been making this morning is about the future and the decisions that we have to make. Obviously, we've been living through a pandemic, and I took over as a Labour Party leader 10 months ago. But the argument I'm making today is about the future and the fork in the road, and the essential question of whether we go back to a system which had baked in insecurity and inequality, or whether we go forward to a better future. So I'm making the argument about the future. The Labour Party lost an election very badly in December 2019.
So it's Jeremy Corbyn's fault you're behind?
No, we've got a lot of work to do, but as leader of the Labour Party now, I feel very strongly it's my duty to make the argument about where we go next.
The key difference between Jeremy Corbyn and Kier Starmer in terms of the opinions of the public is, of course, the media. What you have to understand about the British media is that we have no left-wing media whatsoever. It's basically as if we have Fox News 24/7 in all our tabloids, TV shows, and everything. There were media which pretended nominally to be left-wing, but as soon as we had a viable left-wing candidate in Jeremy Corbyn, the entire edifice of the media, from the centre-left, nominally centre-left, to the far-right, all came out against him. And of course, by the time we got to that election, that had a quite significant impact, because there was no controlling the narrative from a left-wing perspective. This is largely because Jeremy Corbyn set forth in his policies to break up the media monopolies and put an end to this problem should he gain power. So the media did everything in their power to prevent him from doing so. However, Kier Starmer doesn't have this problem because he poses absolutely no threat to the media whatsoever. He poses absolutely no threat to the elites whatsoever, because there is absolutely no chance he will ever be Prime Minister. I mean, I have more chance of that, and I'm not even interested in becoming a politician. And even if he were to gain power, the question is, what would he have done differently? Here's the major issue that Kier Starmer is facing. He's trying to present himself as an alternative to the current incumbents without providing any single policy which is in opposition to what the Conservatives would do, because Kier Starmer is at heart a Conservative.
And when you've been through a pandemic like this, with the sacrifice and the solidarity People want to know, do you want to go back and repair what was there before? I say no. Or do you want to go forward to a better, more secure future? And that's the argument I've been making this morning.
He's trying to talk about the future because he's trying to distract from the fact that every single step of the way, every single decision that the Conservative Party made, Keir Starmer and his apparent Labour Party in name only, had no issue with anything they did, anything Boris did, and would have done exactly the same. The question is, given that, why should anyone believe that they would do anything different in the future? Because they wouldn't. So effectively, you have the choice of Conservative policies delivered by somebody bumbling and charismatic like Boris Johnson, or Conservative policies delivered by a man-shaped hole in reality. If you're a left-winger, you are not going to vote for either, and if you're a right-winger, you're going to be voting for Boris. The same has happened with the Labour Party's funding. Under Jeremy Corbyn, he'd effectively rejected funding from big business and the corporate oligarchies in return for funding from the people and unions, and so on. Keir Starmer put an end to that relationship with the people and the unions, hoping to forge one with big business. But why on earth would big business give money to a puff of smoke left behind after a human ran away when they could just give it to Boris and actually receive something in return? So they didn't, and the Labour Party hemorrhaged money. Yet another reason why under Keir Starmer there is absolutely no chance of a Labour government whatsoever, because it takes money to win elections, unfortunately, and as it stands, the Labour Party has none.
You must be worried, though. I mean, at this stage in his leadership cycle, Tony Blair was 10 to 20 points ahead of the government. You are behind the government in the polls. What's going wrong?
Well, look, a year ago we were in the leadership race for leadership of the Labour Party, and people were asking me, is the Labour Party even going to survive?
And he answered that question. The answer was no, but its reanimated corpse was going to be manoeuvred around the political playing field like some sort of horrible marionette piloted by a Blade Runner replicant that they forgot to put memories in.
That was the question 12 months ago.
So to be clear on that, you're blaming Jeremy Corbyn for where you are in the polls.
Now people are asking me, when are you going to form the next government? That just tells you how far we've come in that 12-month period.
The only people who are asking Keir Starmer when he's going to form the next government oh, sorry. The only people who are asking him that are doing so to point out the absurdity of the idea that could ever happen. They're doing so in the context of him being not only fantastically unpopular with both the left, the right, and the non-existent centre, but also having no money to run a campaign. You might as well be asking when a fish is going to be able to ride a bicycle, or when is Ben Shapiro going to be able to make a coherent argument. And here's the thing, he is constantly blaming Jeremy Corbyn for it. The interviewer keeps saying, so you're blaming Jeremy Corbyn for that? And he's like, yes, but no, but yes, but no, but yes, but no, but yes, you are. You just know that makes you look weak and dumb after all this time. You know, Jeremy Corbyn didn't blame his predecessor. The predecessor before that didn't blame the predecessor before that. It's you, Kier. That's the problem. You are the problem. It's you and your Blairite cronies who are still trying to go to sort of prop up the sort of neoliberal dream, which is dead. You represent a politics, a centre that no longer exists. It's completely untenable. You might as well be the monster raving loony party because your policies are as ridiculous and as likely to be taken seriously by anyone.
Isn't the problem with your argument that the government's done a bad job in so many areas is that it actually reflects pretty badly on you that you can't even beat them in the opinion polls?
Yes.
Well, look, the pandemic is a difficulty for any government. The argument I've been making over the last 10 months or so is that the government has been slow and incompetent.
That is not cutting through. It is not. There's virtually no evidence that is cutting through.
Because the question inevitably rises, what would you have done differently? And the answer inevitably is absolutely nothing at all. Because here's the situation in the UK. In order for democracy to function, we at least must have, at bare minimum, a two-party system so that we can have some degree of choice over who we can vote for. But that's not the situation we've got now. Unfortunately, we have an incredibly fascistic and nightmarish conservative government, perhaps one of the worst, perhaps the worst that Britain has ever seen. We've got mass deaths, we've got mass poverty, we've got Scotland, Ireland, and even Wales trying to break away because it's so awful to be under this government. And while all of that's going on, instead of any degree of opposition to that party, anyone to keep them in check or in line, we have the sound of one hand clapping in human form, providing absolutely no voice to any of those people suffering under these oppressive and regressive authoritarians. So, given that's the case, in what sense can we be said to be living in a democracy? We're not really. That's the sad, sad truth of it. Certainly for as long as Keir Starmer is in power of the Labour leadership. What we need is someone, I think, from a working class background, preferably from the north, who understands the plight of the common person, who's a union man, a socialist. What we don't need is a generic waxwork dummy that they keep at the side before they've decided which celebrity to imprint onto it. Depressing as fuck. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this British episode of Hippie Hyena. It's a lot less of a pantomime over here than it is over in the US, which makes it a lot less fun and a lot more depressing. Anyway, I hope you remember to enjoy the little things in life. A delicious cup of tea, a spliff shared with your friends, a walk in the woods. Nice. Look after yourselves and each other. Hippie Hyena out. Goodbye.